I slumped down onto the old rickety bed in the cramped rented room, my body aching with exhaustion as if someone had pressed down heavily on every fiber of my muscles. I was only 34 years old, but sometimes I felt as ancient as a 60-year-old man. Today had been an endlessly long day, 18 straight hours from the crack of dawn until the dead of night. I just wanted to close my eyes and sink into a deep sleep, forgetting everything. Forgetting the dusty grime clinging to my clothes, forgetting the nagging pains in my back and shoulders. But then the gentle ticking from the old clock placed beside my pillow sounded like an unavoidable reminder. It was the gift my mother had given me for my 24th birthday, 10 years ago now. She had said, "Son, time flies by so quickly, use it to live well." Now each tick pulled me back to reality, to the sole reason I'd been gritting my teeth and enduring this for the past 5 years. My mother, Mrs. Florence Reed, the woman who had sacrificed her entire life for our family, now lying completely paralyzed in her hospital bed. I lay there staring blankly at the ceiling with its mottled cracks, and memories flooded back like a raging river. 5 years ago, my mother, at just 55 years old, was still a gentle seamstress, sitting at her old sewing machine mending clothes for the neighbors. She always smiled softly, her eyes crinkling as she told stories from the past, about the days when my father was still adrift at sea as a sailor. She often said, "Family is everything, Coulson. No matter what happens, we'll always be there for each other." Then on that fateful morning, my father called me, his voice trembling. "Your mother had a stroke, Coulson. The doctors say she's completely paralyzed. She can't walk or speak anymore." I rushed home immediately, my heart feeling like it was being squeezed in a vice. Seeing her lying motionless on the bed, her eyes slightly open but vacant, her mouth twisted and unable to form words, I felt my world collapsing. From that point on, my life changed completely. During the day, I worked as a laborer on a construction site near the Baltimore harbor. The job was grueling, from early morning until late afternoon, hauling cement, mixing mortar and building walls under the scorching sun or relentless rain. My co-workers often teased me for being quiet, calling me the silent guy. I didn't bother responding, just kept my head down and worked because my mind was always on my mother. Once a brick fell on my foot, causing excruciating pain and blood to flow freely, but I gritted my teeth and endured it. "I have to earn money, I have to send it back for Mom," I told myself. The pay for a laborer wasn't high, but it was enough to hold on to. At night, when the sun set, I would don my dark blue uniform, grab a broom and bucket of water, and go clean the towering office buildings in the city center. The brightly lit hallways, the pungent smell of floor cleaner, the noisy hum of the vacuum cleaner. All of it felt like an endless loop. I wiped windows, vacuumed dust, emptied trash, sometimes gazing out the window at the bustling crowds heading home, my heart tightening with envy. They had families waiting for them, but what about me? I only had this cold rented room and dreams of my mother getting healthy again. Every month when I got paid, I set aside almost all of it to send back to my father, Mr. Douglas Reed. He was 66 now, a retired sailor, incredibly hot-tempered and stubborn. He always insisted he could take care of his wife on his own, but I knew he was getting old, and his health wasn't what it used to be. The money I sent was used to buy medications, hire nurses for care, and cover hospital bills for my mother. I imagined the scene of my mother lying in bed, the nurse changing her diapers, feeding her through a tube, and my father sitting beside her, stroking her hand. "Thank you, Coulson," my father would say over the phone, his voice hoarse. "Your mother's doing okay thanks to the money you send." I believed him, absolutely. Then there was my younger brother, Stephen Reed, 29 years old, working at the cargo port near home. He had once fallen into gambling, racking up debts that threw the whole family into turmoil. Once Stephen borrowed from loan sharks and nearly got his legs broken. Dad had to sell some things to pay them off. But since Mom fell ill, I believed Stephen had changed. He helped Dad take care of her, standing in for me, the eldest son who was busy in a distant city. "Don't worry, bro, I've got this," Stephen had texted me once. I smiled when I read it, my heart warming because the family was still there, still connected. But deep down, I often blamed myself. Why wasn't I more capable, more wealthy, so I could take Mom to the best hospitals and hire top doctors? I was just an ordinary laborer with little education and no special talents. I tormented myself for not having more time to visit her. The work was too demanding. Sometimes I did 3 shifts in a row, sleeping only a few hours. The last time I went home was 6 months ago. Mom was still lying there, her eyes looking at me but unable to speak a word. I held her hand, tears streaming down. "Mom, I'm sorry." She just blinked, as if to comfort me. In those moments, the pain felt like a knife twisting in my heart. Every late night when I returned to my room, I would video call my father. It was usually after midnight, after I'd showered, my body utterly spent. "Dad, how's Mom?" I'd ask, my voice weary. Dad would appear on the screen, his wrinkled face under the dim yellow light. "Same as always, son. Mom's sleeping. Don't worry, just focus on working hard." He'd say it quickly, then hang up. For the past 5 years, I'd lived like a machine, working non-stop, sending money regularly, and dreaming of the day Mom would wake up and smile at me. But sometimes, in the dead of night, when the clock's ticking echoed, I suddenly felt a vague unease. As if something wasn't right, but I pushed it away because doubting my family was something I couldn't accept. Then one day, like an unexpected gift from heaven, I got a day off. It was a rare occasion, probably the first time this year. The construction site boss, a gruff man but one who sometimes showed heart, saw me working like an ox and gave me a free day. "Take a break, Coulson," he said, clapping me on the shoulder with his raspy, smoke-roughened voice. "You look like you're about to drop dead." I didn't argue, just nodded in thanks. Immediately, thoughts of my mother flooded in. I would go home and visit her. It had been 6 months since I'd last been there, since the time I sat by her bed, held her hand, and cried silently. This time, I would stay with her longer, tell her about my days in Baltimore, about the dreams I still kept hidden. I packed a few simple things, a clean shirt, some snacks bought hastily from the corner store, and set off. My heart beat faster than usual, a mix of excitement and anxiety. Before leaving, I called my father to let him know. The phone rang a few times, then his voice came through on the other end. "This is Dad, Coulson." His voice sounded odd, not the familiar hoarseness, but strained, as if he were trying to hide something. I quickly told him about my day off and my plan to come home. "I'm coming to visit Mom, Dad. I'll be there by afternoon." He paused for a second, then tried to sound cheerful. I could picture that forced smile through the phone. "Yeah, that's good, son. Come visit your mom. But be careful on the road, it's far and the weather's bad." He gave a few more instructions, but his voice sounded rushed, like he wanted to end the call quickly. I didn't think much of it, just told myself he was probably tired from taking care of Mom. "Yes, I'll be careful. See you soon." I hung up, my heart warming at the thought of going home. But deep down, that strained voice lingered like a discordant note in a familiar symphony. The journey from Baltimore to the town of Salisbury took nearly 3 hours, but that day it felt even longer. I sat on the rickety bus, staring out the window as the scenery blurred by in silence. The bustling highways gradually gave way to lush green fields, then to sparse coastal neighborhoods. The salty sea breeze wafted in through the cracked window, carrying the familiar scent of salt and seaweed from my childhood. I remembered the days when I was little, when Dad would drive the whole family to the beach, Mom sitting in the back, hugging me and Stephen tightly, laughing loudly. "Look at the sea, kids. It's as vast as life itself." Now the sea was still the same, but our lives had changed. I sat there, listening to old music on my phone, sad ballads about family and loss. I didn't talk to anyone, just lost in endless thoughts. Finally, the bus stopped at the familiar station. I grabbed my bag and stepped off, taking a deep breath of the salty sea air. The town of Salisbury was unchanged, peaceful with its narrow streets, low-slung houses, and the distant sound of waves crashing. Our parents' old house was right by the seawall, a simple wooden home with a front porch overlooking the ocean. When I pushed the door open and stepped inside, the familiar smell hit me, a mix of medicine and damp sea air. The living room was dim with only faint sunlight filtering through the curtains. And there, my mother lay on the bed near the window, her body frail and thin, her skin wrinkled like old paper. She wore a white nightgown, her silver hair splayed across the pillow. Her eyes were slightly open, moist and filled with sadness, staring straight at me. My heart clenched. She looked weaker than before, her cheeks sunken, her limbs gaunt. But those eyes, they seemed to recognize me, calling my name in silence. I approached, my steps light so as not to startle her. Sitting down by the bed, I took her hand. The dry, bony, cold hand, fingers curled from lying still for so long. "Mom, I'm home," I whispered, my voice trembling. Tears welled up, but I held them back. A wave of guilt surged through me. I'd been away from home for too long, leaving her here alone with her pain. 6 months, maybe more, I'd been busy with work, sending money but not visiting. Was she angry with me? Was she lonely? I stroked her hand, rambling about trivial things. "I'm doing fine, Mom. The work in Baltimore is tough, but I can handle it. I miss you so much." She didn't respond, just blinked lightly. But I felt the warmth in that gaze. In that moment, all my fatigue melted away, leaving only love. Suddenly, my father emerged from the kitchen, a cloth in his hand. He looked older, his hair stark white, his weathered face etched with wrinkles. "Colson, you're here," he said, trying to sound cheerful but still strained. "Sit and rest. The road must have been tiring." He told me not to bother Mom too much, to let her rest. I nodded, but it felt odd. Why would he say that? Mom was right here, and I'd come to visit her. Then my younger brother, Stephen, came out from the next room carrying a glass of water. He was tall, his hair tousled, flashing a welcoming smile. "Bro, you're back? Have some water." But in his eyes I caught a flicker of tension, like he was hiding something. His gaze averted, his smile a bit stiff. I didn't pay much attention, just happy that the family was together. It had been so long since we'd all sat like this. "Thanks, bro," I said, taking the glass and sipping. We sat there, chatting about random things. The weather, Stephen's job at the port, bits of town news. Dad talked about the days caring for Mom, his voice low. "Your mom's the same but stable, thanks to the money you send." I smiled, my heart warming. After some small talk, I suddenly thought of Mom. She'd been lying here for 5 years, staring at the 4 white walls. It must be so boring. Sunlight streamed through the window, accompanied by the gentle roar of waves. "Dad, how about I take Mom out for a little walk?" I suggested eagerly. "She must be tired of being cooped up inside. To the nearby park to breathe in the sea air and feel better." Both Dad and Stephen froze for a moment. I saw it clearly. Dad stopped wiping the table, his eyes hesitant as he looked at me. Stephen swallowed hard, his face paling slightly. The atmosphere suddenly tensed like a cold gust had blown into the room. Dad was silent for a few seconds, then nodded. "Yeah, that could work. But just the nearby park and come back early. Your mom's weak. She can't handle much." His voice was still forced, but I didn't dwell on it. Stephen chimed in. "Yeah, bro, don't go far." I was thrilled, not noticing the strangeness. This was a chance for Mom to get a change of scenery, to feel life outside. Dad called the nurse taking care of Mom, a young woman named Emily, about 25, with her hair in a ponytail, dressed in a white uniform. He asked her to come along to help. Emily seemed rushed, constantly checking her watch, but she nodded. "Yes, I'll come." She brought a bag of medications and syringes, the familiar items for Mom's care. We prepared the wheelchair, an old one with creaky wheels. I gently lifted Mom and settled her in it, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. Her body was light as a child's. Her silver hair swayed slightly with the breeze from the window. "Mom, let's go for a stroll," I whispered. She blinked, and I imagined I saw a faint smile. We left the house, me pushing the wheelchair along the path by the seawall. The ocean was right in front, waves lapping gently, the sky a clear blue with white clouds drifting by. Emily walked beside us, silent. As I pushed, I told Mom about my work. In Baltimore, I do construction during the day and cleaning at night. It's hard, but I manage for you. The city's huge with crowded traffic, but I miss the sea here. I talked about my co-workers, my hasty meals, my dream of opening a small shop once she got better, just hoping she could hear and feel comforted. Mom sat still, her eyes gazing at the sea as if listening. The salty sea breeze blew through, bringing a rare peace. It had been so long since I'd felt like this. No fatigue, no worries, just family. Midway, as we approached the park, Emily's phone rang loudly. She answered, her voice urgent. "Yes, I'll be right there." Then she turned to me. "Hey, I have an emergency and have to go. Your mom needs her injection on time. If it's late, she could have a seizure. It's very dangerous." She handed me the syringe and gave quick instructions. "Inject this dose at 3 p.m. Don't forget." I nodded, carefully noting it in my phone and setting an alarm. A flash of worry hit me. I'd never injected Mom before, but I reassured myself, I can do this. For Mom. Emily hurried off, leaving me and Mom alone. The park was quiet, with only the rustle of leaves and the sound of waves. I continued pushing, but unease began to stir inside me. Why was everything so strange today? Dad's forced voice, Stephen's tense eyes, the nurse leaving abruptly. But I pushed it aside because this was the last peaceful day before everything came crashing down. The late afternoon gradually descended, the weak sunlight filtering through the tree canopy, dyeing the sparkling sea surface red. I pushed the wheelchair along the small sloping path leading to the park, a familiar route from my childhood where Stephen and I used to run and chase each other. Now it seemed longer, each step heavy with weight. My mother sat quietly in the wheelchair, her silver hair swaying lightly in the salty sea breeze. I bent down, adjusting the blanket covering her legs, afraid the cold wind might seep into her frail body. "Mom, are you warm?" I whispered, even though I knew she couldn't answer. My hand touched her skin, icy cold, and a wave of guilt surged through me. Over the past 5 years, I had sent money home, but had I ever truly been by her side like this? The work in Baltimore was like a whirlwind, sweeping me far away, leaving her with 4 walls and lifeless doses of medication. I looked out at the sea, the waves lapping gently like the old lullabies my mother used to sing, and my heart suddenly tightened with sorrow. I was lost in gazing at the sea, the rolling waves seeming to tell stories of my father's life, the old sailor who once drifted at sea for months on end. Memories flooded back. Those afternoons when my mother sat on the porch waiting for my father to return from the ocean, her arms around me and Stephen as she told fairy tales. "The sea is vast, but our family is the harbor to anchor in," she often said. I smiled, forgetting that the slope was getting steeper. My foot lightly tripped on a jagged stone, just a small stumble, but enough to make the wheelchair slip from my grasp. It tilted forward, then suddenly hurtled down the slope at terrifying speed. In that moment, my heart seemed to stop. The world around me blurred, leaving only the screeching sound of the wheels on the path and the image of my mother sitting helplessly in the chair, her hair flying wildly. "Mom!" I shouted, my voice breaking in my throat. I threw my bag to the ground and ran after it like mad, but the slope was too steep, the chair sliding fast like an arrow. My hand reached out, managing to grab the handle, but the powerful inertia pulled us both tumbling onto the soft grassy verge by the roadside. A loud thud echoed, dirt and grass flying everywhere, and I lay there, holding my mother tightly, my breath coming in gasps. My mother. Her head had lightly hit the ground, a small scratch on her forehead. I quickly sat up, hugging her, frantically checking her breathing. My trembling hand touched her chest. Thankfully, there was still a weak, steady pulse. "Mom, are you okay?" I whispered, tears streaming down uncontrollably. She lay still, her eyes half closed but showing no clear signs of pain. I checked her body all over. No broken limbs, just a few scratches on her arms. My heart burned like fire. How could I be so careless, just because I was lost in thought, just because of a stupid stumble? Fear surged through me, mixed with self-reproach. I had promised to take care of her, to take her for a safe stroll, and yet Without wasting another thought, I rummaged in my bag for my phone, my hands shaking as I dialed emergency services. "Hello, ambulance? There's an accident at the park near the Salisbury seawall. An elderly woman fell from her wheelchair. Please come quickly." My voice faltered, but they promised to arrive right away. I sat there holding my mother, stroking her hair, praying to the heavens that nothing serious would happen to her. The ambulance arrived faster than I expected, its siren wailing through the quiet park. 2 paramedics jumped out, quickly checked my mother, then gently placed her on the stretcher. "Are you family?" "How's the lady?" one asked. I hurriedly recounted the accident, my voice trembling. They nodded and loaded us into the vehicle. Throughout the ride to the hospital, I sat beside my mother, gripping her hand tightly. The ambulance rocked on the road, the siren still blaring, and in my mind there was only one plea. "Please don't let anything happen to Mom, please." I blamed myself endlessly. That moment of carelessness, that damned stumble. Why hadn't I paid more attention? Why hadn't I pushed slower? The image of the chair hurtling down the slope replayed in my head like a nightmare. I didn't dare call my father. He was hot-tempered. If he knew I'd taken Mom out for a walk and caused an accident, he'd scold me harshly. "What the hell were you doing, Colson?" "I told you not to take her far." I could imagine his shouting voice. Stephen would worry too, but he'd probably blame me as well. No, I couldn't face them right now. I just hoped Mom was okay, that after the checkup we'd go home and everything would be as if it never happened. I'd inject her medicine myself, take better care of her. The hospital came into view, the ambulance stopped, and they wheeled Mom into the emergency room. I sat in the hallway, my heart burning with anxiety, watching the clock tick. Each minute passed like an hour. Finally, the door opened and a nurse called me in. The doctor was examining Mom, measuring blood pressure, checking reflexes, then taking scans. I stood there, my hands clenched, praying silently. After a while, the doctor, a middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair and a calm voice, turned to me. "She only has minor abrasions and bruising on her shoulder. No broken bones, no serious head injury. With a few days of rest, she'll recover." I let out a sigh of relief, feeling the weight in my chest dissolve. "Thank you, doctor," I said, my voice trembling with relief. Mom lay there, her eyes slightly open, looking better. I sat beside her, stroking her hand, my heart filled with gratitude. At least the accident wasn't serious. I could take her home, and tomorrow everything would be normal. As I prepared to sign the discharge papers, Dr. Leonard Briggs paused, looking at me thoughtfully. "You're her son, right? What's her condition that she needs a wheelchair?" he asked, his voice gentle but curious. I quickly explained. "My mother has been completely paralyzed for 5 years due to a stroke. She can barely move and can't speak." The doctor frowned, shaking his head slightly. "That's strange," he said softly, as if to himself. "I don't see any signs of long-term paralysis. Her muscles aren't atrophied, her knee reflexes are functioning normally, and her joints are soft and flexible. It doesn't resemble a bedridden paralysis patient at all." His words hit me like a bolt from the blue. I stood frozen, cold sweat running down my spine, my limbs numb. "What do you mean, doctor?" "Could it be?" My voice trailed off, trembling. He looked at me, his eyes serious. "The test results aren't wrong. Mrs. Florence's body is completely normal. There's no sign of prolonged neurological damage. You should probably check her medical history again." I left the hospital, pushing the wheelchair with my mother, but my mind was in turmoil. The doctor's words echoed. Muscles not atrophied. Normal reflexes, completely normal. How could that be? For 5 years, my father and Stephen had always said Mom was completely paralyzed, needing constant medication. I looked at my mother. She sat quietly, her eyes gazing at the sea, but now that gaze seemed different. Not vacant, but as if hiding something. The alarm for her injection time rang, but I hesitated. Did she really need it? Doubt began to creep in like a crack in the ice. On the way home, the sea breeze blew stronger, carrying a bitter, salty scent, and my heart sank into deep contemplation. Something wasn't right, but I wasn't ready to face it yet. The peaceful day had ended and the storm was approaching. The road from the hospital back home seemed longer than ever, even though it was only a few blocks away. I pushed the wheelchair slowly, avoiding the potholes on the old cobblestone path, afraid of jolting my mother. The evening light dyed the sea surface red, the waves lapping gently as if whispering secrets I didn't yet know. My mother sat motionless, a scarf wrapped around her shoulders, her silver hair swaying lightly in the wind. I glanced at my phone's clock. It was already 10 minutes past the injection time, as Nurse Emily had instructed. She had said that if it was late, Mom could have a seizure. It was very dangerous. But now my mother still sat calmly, showing no signs of anything unusual. No trembling, no facial twitching, nothing at all. My heart pounded. Shouldn't there be something? For 5 years, my father had always emphasized that the injections were a lifesaver, the thing that kept her from agonizing pain. And yet now, I stopped by the roadside, my hands gripping the wheelchair handles tightly, trying to shake off the rising unease. "Mom, I won't inject it, okay? Just for today," I whispered, as if asking for her opinion. She didn't respond, just blinked lightly, and I convinced myself that it was a sign of agreement. But deep down, the anxiety coiled like a venomous snake in my stomach, waiting to strike. I remembered those late-night video calls when my father always hurried to hang up after a few sentences. "Your mom's fine. She's sleeping." The injection was given on time. He said that, and I believed him. Believed absolutely, because he was my father, the one who taught me to get back up after every fall. But now, Dr. Leonard Briggs's words repeated in my head like a faulty recording. No signs of long-term paralysis. Her body is completely normal. He was a doctor. What did he know? Or was he mistaken? I tried to think that way, but the image of my mother's knee reflex, the way her leg jerked slightly when the doctor tapped with the hammer, kept flashing vividly. Someone bedridden and paralyzed for 5 years couldn't have reflexes like that, right? When we arrived, the wooden house by the seawall appeared under the dim yellow streetlights. The front door was slightly ajar, and my father, Mr. Douglas, opened it right away when he heard the creaking wheels. His face was flushed, the wrinkles deeper under the light, and his voice rang out immediately, full of reproach. "Coulson, where did you take your mom that took so long?" "I told you, just the nearby park," he scolded, reaching out to steady the wheelchair, his eyes scanning over Mom as if checking her. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice calm. "Sorry, Dad, there was a small accident on the slope, but Mom's fine now." He frowned, then asked sharply, "Have you given her the injection yet?" It should have been done by now. I hesitated for a second, then told the truth. "Not yet, Dad. I forgot." Dad's face suddenly went pale, as if I'd said something horrific. He didn't say anything more, just pushed me aside, wheeled the chair inside, and rushed to the kitchen to rummage through the medicine cabinet. I stood there, my heart racing, watching him grab the syringe and vial, the medicine I'd sent money home to buy. He injected her immediately, his hands trembling slightly, but the movements practiced as if he'd done it thousands of times. "It has to be on time or your mom could seize up and die," he muttered, his voice full of worry. I helped Dad lift Mom onto the bed. Her body was light as a feather, her skin icy cold under my hands. As we laid her down, I leaned close to her face, adjusting the pillow and blanket, and that's when I noticed. Her eyes weren't as vacant as usual. Normally they were cloudy, lifeless, as if lost in a long dream. But now those eyes were brighter, glistening with tears, and I saw it clearly. Her lips trembled slightly, like an unconscious effort to say something she couldn't. "Mom?" I whispered, my heart pounding. She looked at me, her lips moving faintly, but no sound came out. It was a chilling moment. Was she trying to speak, trying to warn me about something? Or was it just my illusion after the accident? I stroked her cheek, tears welling up. "Rest now, Mom. I'm here." But she kept looking, her eyes pleading like a silent cry for help. I stood up, my legs shaking, and left the room, closing the door gently. Outside, I leaned against the wall for a moment, taking deep breaths to regain my composure. My heart drummed like a drum, cold sweat breaking out despite the cool sea breeze. In my mind, all the details started connecting. Dr. Briggs's words about her normal body, Dad's strained attitude when I called to say I was coming home, Stephen's tense eyes when I first stepped into the house. It was all like scattered puzzle pieces gradually fitting together, painting a picture I wasn't ready to see clearly. Could it be? No, it couldn't. They were my family. I walked to the kitchen, my feet heavy as lead, the small kitchen with weak fluorescent light shining down on the old wooden table. Dad and Stephen were sitting there, drinking wine in silence. The red wine bottle was half empty, 2 drained glasses on the table. The strong smell of alcohol mixed with the antiseptic scent from Mom's room lingered, making me feel suffocated, like my throat was being squeezed. I sat down across from them and decided to tell everything. My voice tried to stay calm, but inside was a storm. Today, when I took Mom for a walk, I tripped, and the wheelchair slid down the slope. I called an ambulance and took her to the hospital. The doctor checked her and said she only had minor abrasions, that she'd be fine with a few days of rest. I paused, swallowed, then continued. But the doctor said Mom is completely normal. No signs of muscle atrophy or loss of reflexes at all. Her muscles are flexible like a healthy person's. Those words hung in the air and I saw it clearly. Both of them froze for a moment. Dad stopped lifting his glass, his eyes widening for a second before he quickly hid it. Stephen swallowed hard, his face paling. A few seconds later, Dad forced a laugh, a crooked smile that couldn't hide the tension. What do doctors in this small town know? They just do superficial exams. They don't understand your mom's complex chronic condition. He said it, trying to sound normal, but I heard the tremor in his voice. Maybe today she was feeling better, so her reflexes were stronger than usual. The medications help with that. He patted my shoulder, but his hand was icy cold. Stephen quickly chimed in, his voice evasive. Yeah, bro, you haven't been home in ages. You don't understand Mom's condition fully. She's up and down, complicated. Dad and I have been taking care of her for 5 years, changing diapers, feeding her, staying up nights when she seizes. It's tough. You're far away, working and sending money, but you don't know everything we've gone through. He spoke quickly, his eyes avoiding mine, his hand gripping the wine glass tightly. I sat silently listening, not reacting. Their words sounded reasonable, but why did waves of doubt rise in my heart? It was as if they were acting, covering something up. But mixed in was guilt. Was I wrongly suspecting my father and brother? They had cared for Mom in my place, sacrificing time and energy. I was in Baltimore sending money, but did I really understand them? Yeah, maybe, I said softly. But inside, the crack had grown wider. Before leaving home to return to Baltimore for work, I went back to Mom's room one last time. She lay there under the dim bedside lamp, her eyes still slightly open. I leaned down and kissed her forehead. I'm heading back, Mom. I'll call tomorrow. She looked at me, her eyes following in silence. For some reason, I felt those eyes wanted to say something, a warning I couldn't yet understand. The days that followed in Baltimore were hell for me. I returned to the familiar grind, hauling cement at the construction site by day, cleaning offices by night. But my mind was no longer there. Every time I lifted a bucket of mortar, my hands trembled, not from fatigue, but from the relentless flood of thoughts. Dr. Briggs's words echoed endlessly. Her body is completely normal. How could that be? For 5 years, I had sent thousands of dollars home, believing it was to save my mother, to provide her with medicine and nursing care, but now everything seemed like a scam. I lay on the bed in my cramped rented room, staring at the mottled ceiling, plagued by chronic insomnia. The ticking of the clock my mother gave me felt like torture. Each tick a question: what were Dad and Stephen hiding? Why did they freeze when I mentioned the hospital? Why didn't Mom have a seizure despite missing her injection? I blamed myself for being too trusting, for blindly sending money without checking. But the unease didn't fade. It grew like a tumor, making it impossible to sit still. After many sleepless nights, I decided I had to investigate quietly. No warnings, no questions, I would uncover the truth myself. Because if my instincts were right, the family I clung to, the only thing I had, was crumbling. A week later, I asked for half a day off at the site. The boss frowned. "Another day off, Coulson? You work like an ox, but you're always taking breaks." I mumbled an apology, lying about a headache, then rushed to the bus back to Salisbury. The 3-hour ride this time wasn't silent like before. My heart pounded, cold sweat broke out despite the chilly weather. I stared out the window, the scenery blurring past unseen, my mind fixed on the plan. Show up unannounced. Observe. Find evidence. If Dad and Stephen were hiding something, they wouldn't expect me back so soon. I told myself to stay calm, to act normal, but my hands gripped my bag tightly, my heart racing with anticipation. Would I find anything? Or was it all my imagination and I'd end up ashamed for doubting my own flesh and blood? The salty sea wind rushed in as the bus arrived, and I stepped off, my legs slightly shaky. Salisbury was still peaceful, but to me it now felt like a labyrinth full of secrets. I walked to the wooden house by the seawall, trying to step lightly to avoid noise. The front door was slightly ajar, and I pushed it gently, my heart drumming. Inside, the familiar air, medicine mixed with damp sea scent, but no Dad or Stephen. Only Nurse Emily sat by Mom's bed reading a book. She startled and looked up when she saw me. "Coulson? Why are you here so suddenly? Your Dad and Stephen are out. I don't know when they'll be back." Her voice trembled slightly, her eyes avoiding mine, and I sensed the tension. "Yeah, just a surprise visit to see Mom," I said, forcing a friendly smile. "Where did Dad and my brother go?" She shook her head. "I'm not sure. Mr. Douglas said he had business in town and Stephen went to work at the port." I nodded, a slight relief. This was my chance. I pretended to tidy up, sweeping the living room with a broom, wiping the kitchen table, but my eyes scanned everywhere. My heart beat faster as I slipped into Dad's room, the small one at the end of the hall where he slept alone since Mom got sick. The door was ajar and I pushed it lightly, stepping in like a cat. The smell of old tobacco and wine lingered, his bed unmade, and I quickly moved to the desk, the bottom drawer where he kept important papers. My hands shook as I pulled it open, afraid of making noise. Inside, a mess of documents. Mom's medical records, pharmacy receipts, and a thick stack of long-term care insurance contracts in Florence Reed's name. My heart pounded as if it would burst. These were what I needed. I flipped through quickly, seeing hospital records from 5 years ago confirming the stroke, followed by nurse bills and medication lists. I took out my phone, hands trembling so much I nearly dropped it, and photographed everything. Every medical page, every receipt, every signature. Sweat rolled down my forehead as I listened for sounds from the living room, afraid Emily would notice. But she stayed with Mom, and I finished, closed the drawer, and left the room as if nothing happened. Back in Baltimore that night, I sat in my narrow room under the dim desk lamp, opening the photos on my phone. My heart raced like opening Pandora's box. I zoomed into the records, the initial hospital treatment plan, anticoagulants, physical therapy, but nothing about muscle relaxants or strong sedatives. Then I compared the pharmacy lists, a series of unfamiliar names, diazepam, lorazepam, heavy sedatives, and even vecuronium, a temporary muscle paralytic I'd read about online when researching Mom's condition. They weren't in the treatment plan. My blood ran cold, my hands shaking as I scrolled further. At the end of the files, I found insurance payout records, large regular payments over 5 years for long-term care, deposited directly into an account under Douglas Reed. Not the family account, but Dad's personal one. I collapsed onto the bed, breathing heavily. How could this be? Insurance money for a severely ill mother, but Dad took it all? And the paralytic drugs, were they deliberately keeping her paralyzed to continue receiving payments? The thought cut into my heart like a knife. 5 years of sacrifice, working myself to exhaustion, sending money. It was all to feed this lie? Tears rolled down my face, not from sadness, but from rage and pain. The next day, I couldn't wait any longer. I arranged to meet Nurse Emily at a cafe near the docks, a small, quiet place with the smell of roasted coffee mixed with salty sea air. I texted her, "Meet me at Old Dock Cafe, 10 a.m. It's important." She agreed. When I arrived, the place was nearly empty, just a few fishermen in the far corner. Emily walked in, her face pale, eyes darting around as if afraid of being followed. "Coulson, what's wrong?" she asked, her voice low. I didn't beat around the bush, pulled out my phone and showed her the photos. "Explain this. These drugs, sedatives, paralytics, not in the treatment plan." Her face went even paler, her hands shaking as she held the phone, speechless. Her eyes widened, tears welling up, and the cafe's atmosphere suddenly grew tense like a storm was brewing. After a heavy silence, Emily sighed, her voice trembling as she confessed, I didn't want to get involved, but since you know, I'll tell you everything. At first, I believed your father, thought your mom was really paralyzed after the stroke. I cared for her as instructed, giving injections on time." She paused, swallowing hard. "But after a few months, I noticed something strange. The doses were too strong, heavy sedatives, and her condition was odd. Her muscles didn't atrophy. Reflexes were still there, but she lay still like she was locked in. I got suspicious and asked Mr. Douglas." Her voice broke. "He got angry, told me not to interfere. Then he doubled my pay, from $500 to $1,000 a month, and threatened that if I spoke out, he'd report me to the police for abusing a patient. I was scared, didn't want trouble, so I stayed silent and agreed. I listened, my body turning ice cold like someone had poured freezing water over me. Everything clicked. Dad and Stephen had deliberately turned Mom into a lifelong invalid, using drugs to keep her paralyzed, to milk money from me and the insurance. The money I sent, the insurance payouts, all into their pockets. I clenched my fists, my voice choking. How could they do this? She's his wife, their mother. I pressed further, my voice shaking with anger. What else? Do Dad and my brother stay home much? Emily nodded, her voice soft. They're often away, leaving me alone with her. Mr. Douglas goes out of town a lot, Stephen to bars or the port, sometimes coming home late. I feed her, change her, give the injections. Her words cut like knives, confirming my fears. Mom lay there conscious but trapped by the drugs, witnessing everything, their laughter, their schemes, unable to cry for help. The pain was so intense I wanted to scream, but the quiet cafe forced me to hold it in. Thank you, I said, my voice hoarse. At the end of the conversation, I asked Emily to keep it secret. Don't tell Dad or my brother about this meeting. And from now on, take the injections from Dad, but don't give them to my mom. She nodded, eyes red. I promise, Coulson. I feel guilty too. I left the cafe, the sea wind blowing hard, but my heart was now a blaze of anger. The truth was out and I wouldn't stop. Dad and Stephen, the betrayers, would pay the price. After the meeting with Emily, I could no longer sleep. Back in my rented room in Baltimore, I lay awake all night, eyes wide open, staring at the mottled ceiling. The image of my mother lying motionless on the bed, imprisoned by those poisonous doses, haunted me relentlessly. She was conscious, hearing everything. The sound of Dad laughing with Stephen about money, their plans to keep her sick to collect benefits, but unable to cry for help. For 5 years I had worked like an animal, sending money home in the hope of saving her, only for it all to fuel a scam orchestrated by my own flesh and blood. Tears rolled down my face in the darkness, not from sorrow, but from rage and betrayal. I asked myself, how could they do this? Dad, the man I once revered, who told stories of the sea to teach me strength. Stephen, my younger brother, who had stumbled before but whom I believed had changed. Now they were strangers, monsters wearing the mask of family. The more I thought, the stronger my intuition grew. It was darker than I had imagined. Not just the insurance money, not just the drugs. There had to be more, deeper secrets I needed to unearth. The next morning, instead of going to work, I called in for extended leave, lying about a serious illness. The boss grumbled, but I didn't care. I decided to stay in Salisbury, renting a cheap room near the seawall, just a few blocks from my parents' house. It was a rundown motel with peeling paint on the walls and a musty smell, but it was enough to hide and observe. My heart was full of excitement and anxiety. If discovered, everything would collapse. But I couldn't stop. This was for Mom, for 5 years of sacrifice betrayed. The first morning in Salisbury, I woke at dawn, brewed a strong black coffee in the motel room, then drove the cheap rental, a beat-up pickup, to the end of the street opposite my parents' house. I parked in a hidden spot behind thick bushes, turned off the engine, and waited. My heart pounded, hands gripping the steering wheel, eyes glued to the wooden house by the seawall. As soon as the sun rose, the door opened, and Mr. Douglas, my father, stepped out. He was dressed more neatly than usual. A clean plaid shirt, new jeans, polished leather shoes. Not the old clothes he wore around the house. He looked around for a moment as if checking for followers, then got into his old pickup, started the engine, and drove in the opposite direction from town toward the outskirts. I held my breath, waited a few minutes, then followed from afar, keeping a safe distance to avoid detection. My heart beat faster. Where was he going? Why dressed like that? The familiar road led out of Salisbury, past green fields and sparse woods, but I didn't dare follow too closely, afraid he'd recognize my vehicle. He stopped at a roadside cafe, bought fast food, then continued. I returned to my spot, my mind full of suspicion. That dark intuition grew stronger. He wasn't working, he was retired. So where was he going? By noon, with the sun high and scorching, I still sat in the truck, sweating profusely, eyes fixed on the house. Stephen emerged, wearing a crisp white shirt and black slacks, looking like he was heading to a meeting rather than working at the cargo port. He checked his watch, got into the old sedan, bought a few years ago with money I sent, and drove off, disappearing around the bend. I didn't follow immediately, but waited. The house now held only Nurse Emily. I saw her silhouette through the window, occasionally stepping onto the porch, looking around uneasily. Her eyes darted, hands clutching her phone tightly, perhaps worried about her promise to me, afraid of being caught. I sat there, hastily eating a sandwich from the corner store, lost in thought. For 5 years, I thought they stayed home caring for Mom, sacrificing their time, but now they were often away, leaving Emily alone. So what was the nurse money I sent used for? To cover the scam? I recalled those late-night calls, Dad always rushing to hang up. Mom's sleeping, don't worry. Now I understood. He was probably somewhere else, not by her side. Rage surged, but I held it in, waiting for the right moment. The next day, I continued surveillance, waking earlier, parking in a different spot to avoid suspicion. Light rain fell, the cold sea wind seeping through the car window, but I didn't care. My heart raced like I was playing a dangerous game. If caught, Dad would yell, Stephen would deny, and everything would shatter. But I had to know the truth. Mr. Douglas left the house early again, but this time I didn't follow him. I waited for Stephen. By noon, he exited, still in a white shirt, got into the sedan and drove off. I started the engine, tailing from afar, keeping 2 cars between us. The road led out of town, past sparse neighborhoods, and he stopped at a roadside bar. An old place with flickering neon signs, loud rock music mixed with drunken laughter spilling out. I parked in a shadowed corner, turned off the lights, and watched through the rain-streaked windshield. Stephen walked in, greeting a group of rough-looking men who laughed boisterously, then sat at a card table. Through the bar's foggy glass, I saw clearly. He drank, beer overflowing his glass, laughing loudly. Then he played cards, pulling out his wallet after each loss, counting cash without hesitation. Those green dollar bills, I recognized them instantly. It was the money I sent for Mom, money from my sweat and tears, from 18-hour shifts now used for gambling and drinking. My heart felt crushed, tears welling up. Stephen had promised to quit gambling the day Mom fell ill, but now he was the same, even worse, using scam money to indulge. I sat in the truck, hands gripping the wheel until my knuckles turned white, wanting to storm into the bar and shout, "What are you doing with my money?" But I held back. I needed solid evidence. The rain fell harder, as if crying for me. The following day, I switched to following Dad. I woke at 4 a.m., drank black coffee to stay alert, then parked and waited. Mr. Douglas left as the sun rose, still neatly dressed, driving the pickup north toward the suburbs. This time I followed closer, maintaining a safe distance on the winding roads. My heart pounded, excitement like in a detective movie. If he turned and saw me, it was over. The road led to a quiet suburban area, small houses scattered among trees. He stopped in front of a small white house with a red tiled roof and a tiny flower garden. Cozy, not the home of a poor retired sailor. I parked far away behind bushes and watched through cheap binoculars I'd bought in a hurry. Dad got out, looked around, then knocked. The door opened and a woman, about 50, dyed blonde hair, wearing a floral dress, stepped out, embracing him tightly. They kissed, laughed, then went inside together, the door closing. My heart stopped. I recognized her. She'd appeared in a group photo on Stephen's phone when I borrowed it to make a call. Stephen had jokingly called her Dad's acquaintance, brushing off my question with a grin. Now it was clear. Dad was keeping another woman, using the money for a second life. All the pieces fell into place. For 5 years, while I exhausted myself in Baltimore, working double shifts to send money for Mom's treatment, they lived off it. Stephen squandered it on gambling and drinking, losing without regret, while Dad used it to support his mistress, buying nice clothes, acting like a boss. The insurance money, the money I sent, it all went into their pockets while Mom lay there, poisoned by drugs to sustain the lie. I sat in the truck, tears streaming down, my heart aching like it was being cut. How could they be so cruel? Mom, the gentle woman who sacrificed her life for the family, turned into a money-making tool. They didn't just deceive me, they maintained her paralysis to keep receiving insurance and my regular payments. The more I thought, the more unforgivable it seemed. The image of Mom's trembling lips and pleading eyes was clearer than ever. She knew everything but couldn't speak. I recalled my rare visits home, Dad always rushing me out, Stephen tense, all to hide it. My 5 years of sacrifice, the exhausting nights, the back pain, it was all meaningless. I wanted to scream, to rush home and confront them, but I held back. I needed stronger evidence, needed calm. The rain stopped, dusk fell, and I drove back to the motel, my heart heavy. That night I didn't go to my room right away, but sat in the truck overlooking the sea. The waves crashed against the rocks with a roar, as if venting my anger, white foam scattering under the dim moonlight. The cold sea wind blew through the cracked window, carrying the bitter, salty scent of the ocean. The ocean Dad once sailed, teaching me honesty. Now he had betrayed it all. I sat there, hands clenched, thoughts swirling. Tomorrow there would be no more room for silence. I would confront them, rescue Mom from that hell. But tonight I let the pain sink deep, turning rage into strength. The waves kept crashing, and I knew the real storm was coming. The next morning I woke at the crack of dawn, the sky still pitch black, heavy clouds blanketing the heavens like a harbinger of a terrible day. I skipped breakfast, only gulping down a cup of strong black coffee in the motel. Its bitter taste spread through my mouth, matching the bitterness in my heart. My heart pounded as I drove to my parents' house. The home I once saw as a sanctuary, now nothing but a prison for my mother. No more hiding. I wanted to end everything today. 5 years of deception, 5 years of futile sacrifice, it all had to stop. The gloomy sky, the howling wind, the raging sea with waves crashing against the seawall like thunder. It all mirrored my mood, furious, heartbroken, and resolute. Rain began to fall lightly, wetting the windshield, but I didn't care. I parked in front of the house, stepped out, my shirt clinging to my skin from the cold rain. My hands clenched the keys, my heart full of excitement and fear, not of them, but of the moment of confrontation that would tear apart whatever remained of our family. But I had to do it. For Mom, for myself. I pushed the door open and stepped inside, the creaking hinges echoing in the heavy air. Inside, the living room was dim, lit only by the faint yellow glow of a table lamp on the old wooden table. Dad and Stephen were sitting there, Dad smoking a cigarette, the smoke curling like a veil of deception. Stephen holding a coffee cup, eyes glued to his phone. They startled when they saw me. Dad paused with the cigarette in hand, eyes widening. "Coulson? Why are you back so early?" His voice tried to sound normal, but I heard the panic. Stephen set down his phone, his face pale. Bro, did you forget something? My gaze was cold as steel, staring straight at them without blinking. I stood there, rain dripping from my hair onto the floor, my heart like ice. I was no longer the quiet, simple son. I was a man betrayed, ready to confront. I'm here to end everything, I said, my voice low but firm, resounding in the room. The atmosphere suddenly tensed like a string about to snap. Dad frowned, Stephen swallowed hard, and I knew they sensed part of it. I began, my voice steady and resolute, giving them no chance to interrupt. I know everything. The withdrawals from the insurance account, the lavish spending, even injecting Mom with drugs to keep her paralyzed, so you could keep getting money from me and the insurance company. My words exploded like a bomb, hanging in the air. I detailed everything without holding back. I found the papers in your drawer, Dad. Receipts for sedatives and paralytics not in the treatment plan. Insurance money transferred directly to your account. I followed Stephen to the bar, saw him gambling, pulling out cash, the money I sent for Mom. And you, Dad, I saw you at the White House in the suburbs with that woman. For 5 years, I worked myself to death thinking I was saving Mom, but you used that money to live comfortably, to betray her. My voice grew louder, trembling with anger, tears welling up, but I held them back. The image of Mom lying still, her eyes pleading, kept flashing, pushing me on. Dad sat frozen, his face flushed. Stephen stood, hands shaking. The living room felt suffocating, the mix of cigarette smoke and damp rain making me nauseous. I remembered those nights in Baltimore, lying awake, thinking of family, sending money with hope. All now a cruel joke. Mr. Douglas frowned deeper, trying to stay calm, his voice hoarse but defensive. You're obsessed, Coulson. What you saw is just a misunderstanding. Nurse Emily? She made it up. I fired her for being lazy. The insurance money? It's to care for your mom, for the whole family. What do you think I used it for? I'm old, I need rest, but everything is for your mother. He said it, waving the cigarette, smoke billowing like a cover for the truth. But his eyes darted away, unable to meet mine. Stephen stood fully, explaining loudly, his voice shrill with panic. You're wrong! We just wanted to maintain the care costs. Mom's seriously ill, the drugs are expensive, insurance is complicated. I go to the bar just to unwind, not to gamble. You're far away. How would you know what we've been through? Staying up nights caring for Mom, worrying about money. It's all for the family, no bad intentions. He spoke quickly, hands flailing, face red. Their words sounded familiar. Just like when I mentioned the hospital, forced smiles and evasions. But now I saw the falseness clearly. Dad's eyes blinking rapidly, Stephen swallowing constantly. They were acting, trying to salvage it, but it was too late. I stood there, my heart aching like it was being cut. Why were they still denying? Why not admit it? Apologize? Memories flooded back. Dad teaching me to fish by the sea, Stephen sharing candy when we were kids. Now it was all shattered, leaving only anger. I ignored everything, no more arguing. Their words were like wind. I walked straight to Mom's room, my steps heavy as lead, but my resolve ironclad. The room was dark, the antiseptic smell lingering. Mom lay on the bed, her frail body under a thin blanket. Her weak eyes turned toward me, glistening with tears, as if waiting for this moment. My heart clenched. She knew. She always knew. I sat by the bed, taking her hand. Mom, I know everything. It's over. I'm taking you away. They won't hurt you anymore. I nodded slightly, promising with my eyes to protect her, to make up for 5 years of hell. She blinked lightly, her lips trembling faintly, and I felt relief in her gaze. Tears rolled down my face, not from weakness, but from liberation. For 5 years, she lay here, witnessing it all. Dad laughing with his mistress over the phone, Stephen boasting about money, unable to speak. Now I would be her voice. As I bent down to lift her, her body light as a feather, her skin cold but warm with love, Stephen rushed in from the doorway, blocking me, his voice frantic. What are you doing? You can't take Mom. She needs to stay for treatment, for her medicine. Are you crazy? He reached out to grab my shoulder, eyes red, but I saw the fear. Fear of losing the money, the scam. Dad stood from the living room, stepping in, his voice threatening and echoing. "Stop, Coulson. You're destroying the family. Put her down. Let me handle it. If you take her, you'll regret it. I'm your father." He approached, fists clenched, his weathered face twisted with anger and fear. The small room suddenly felt explosive. My heart pounded, but I wasn't afraid. Rage had transformed me. I whipped around, my gaze sharp as a blade, sweeping over them, my voice short but powerful. "If you touch me or Mom, I'll call the police right now. I have all the evidence, documents, photos, the nurse's testimony. Don't push me." My words cut through the air like a knife. The determination in my eyes made them freeze, stepping back. Stephen let go, his face ashen. Dad stood still, eyes wide with shock. They knew I was serious, 5 years of silence, but now I had changed. I carried Mom out of the house, stepping across the wet wooden porch, rain pattering on the roof, soaking my shoulders but not cooling my anger. Mom rested in my arms, her head on my shoulder, eyes half closed as if at peace. Stephen stood silently at the door, watching, lips moving but silent, eyes red. Regret or just fear? Dad collapsed into a chair in the living room, hands over his head, shoulders shaking like a defeated old man. I didn't look back. No goodbye. Why should I? They had died in my heart the moment the truth emerged. The door slammed shut behind me with a dry thud, like a hammer nailing the coffin of 5 years of deception. The rain grew heavier. The sea roared, but my heart felt strangely light. I placed Mom in the car seat, wrapped her in a warm blanket, then drove away, heading to Baltimore, starting a new journey for us. The road was long, rain falling, but I knew from now on we would be free. Mom would heal and I would make up for everything. The journey back to Baltimore took 3 hours, but that day it felt shorter, for my heart was filled with hope mixed with worry. Rain pattered on the windshield, the wipers swishing steadily like my heartbeat. Mom sat beside me, eyes half closed, breathing gently, no longer with that vacant look. I glanced at her, hands gripping the wheel tightly. "Mom, we're going to my place. I'll take care of you. No one will hurt you anymore." She didn't respond, but I felt it, through the way she blinked lightly as if comforting me. I thought about the past 5 years, the endless shifts, money sent home like water down the drain, all to feed Dad and Stephen's scam. Now I was free, but also alone, just Mom and me against the world. By the time we reached Baltimore, night had fallen, rain still pouring, the city lights glittering but cold. I brought Mom to my cramped rented room where I'd lived alone for years. The space was small, just a bed, a table, and the old clock by the pillow. I laid her down, wrapped her in a warm blanket, then made a thin soup from the scant ingredients in the fridge. "Eat, Mom," I whispered, spooning it gently, my heart aching as she swallowed with difficulty. That night I sat by the bed, holding her hand, unable to sleep. The rain outside the window was like a lullaby, but in my mind was a storm. Worry for Mom, anger at Dad and Stephen, and questions about the future. From that day on, I cared for Mom devotedly, as if to make up for 5 years of absence and deception. I cut back on work. No more double shifts, just the day laborer job. Nights were for staying with Mom. The site boss grumbled, "Are you crazy, Coulson? Less pay. How will you live?" I shook my head. "I have Mom now. That's enough." Income dropped, but I saved, buying nutritious food and vitamins from the nearby pharmacy. Every morning I woke early, warmed milk for Mom, massaged her limbs to prevent atrophy. I stopped the injections completely, those toxic vials Dad had forced Emily to use. At first I worried, afraid she'd seize as they threatened, but nothing happened. In the early days, Mom still lay still, but I noticed small changes. Her skin grew rosier, her eyes brighter, no longer dull and lifeless. I sat with her for hours, telling old stories. About her sewing clothes for me, Dad's tales of the sea, little Stephen running around. "Remember, Mom? I was naughty, tore my shirt. You scolded me, but sewed it anyway." She blinked, and I smiled, my heart warming. I read to her from old library novels, my voice echoing in the small room. In those moments, I felt like a child again, with Mom as my rock. But deep down, the pain lingered. How could Dad and Stephen do this? How did they turn her into a prisoner in her own body? In the following days, Mom gradually regained life, like a wilted flower watered anew. Without the poison, her body responded well. At first, small movements. Her fingers curled slightly when I held them as if grasping back. My heart raced. "Mom, you can move!" I shouted, tears streaming, overjoyed. She blinked faster as if responding. I massaged daily, helped her sit propped against pillows, fed her nutrient-rich porridge with pureed vegetables. A week later, she began blinking deliberately, 1 for yes, 2 for no, when I asked, "Hungry, Mom?" 1 blink and I laughed loudly, hope flooding me. Then, after more time, her lips moved, trying to speak. The first time, she whispered a few words. "Si, called sen." Her voice was weak, hoarse after 5 years of silence, but to me it was the most beautiful sound in the world. I hugged her, sobbing, "Mom, you can speak. I'm here, I'm here." She smiled faintly, eyes glistening, and in that moment all fatigue vanished. I called a doctor, not from Salisbury, but in Baltimore, a new, honest one. He examined her. She was affected by heavy sedatives, but her body is basically healthy. With continued recovery, she'll walk again. I nodded, gratitude overflowing. Each day I supported her in exercises, from fingers to arms, then legs. She progressed quickly, as if her body had been waiting for this moment. During Mom's recovery, Dad and Stephen showed up unexpectedly. It was a drizzly afternoon in Baltimore about 2 weeks after I took her away. I was feeding Mom porridge when a knock sounded. Opening the door, I saw them, Dad looking older, silver hair disheveled, Stephen gaunt, eyes shadowed. "Colson, let me in," Dad said, voice hoarse, forcing a smile. I blocked the door, my heart cold. "What do you want?" They entered, looking at Mom on the bed. Her eyes met theirs with estrangement and chill. Dad sat, pleading, "Son, I know you're angry, but listen. We were poor, Mom was gravely ill, insurance was a lifeline. Stephen and I just wanted to provide, but we got carried away. Don't turn your back on family, we're blood." Stephen added, eyes red, "Bro, I was wrong, but because of poverty, debts. Mom needs us together." Their words cut like knives, blaming poverty. Poor, yet Dad kept a mistress. Stephen gambled? I recalled my exhausting nights sending money while they laughed and squandered. Rage surged. I growled, "Get out! You're no longer my family. You poisoned Mom, deceived me for 5 years. For money. Don't come again or I'll call the police." Dad stood, eyes blazing. "You dare? I'm your father." But I pushed them out, voice icy. "Not anymore. Leave." They went, Dad muttering curses, Stephen glancing at Mom with fake remorse. I slammed the door, hugged Mom, heart aching but resolute. She blinked as if agreeing. 2 months later, Mom recovered miraculously. She could walk slowly, leaning on me, taking her first steps around the room. "Son, I can walk," she said, voice clearer though still weak. I laughed, hugging her. "You're amazing, Mom." She sat by the window, gazing at the bustling city, telling me stories of old days, her love for Dad, but now without sadness. One evening, as we ate dinner, her favorite vegetable porridge, she held my hand, voice trembling. "Son, I must tell you. For those 5 years, I was fully conscious. I heard everything, every whisper from Dad and Stephen, every sin, every plot. They discussed insurance money, how to inject drugs to keep me sick forever, laughing as they divided the money you sent. I heard Dad on the phone with that woman, Stephen, bragging about gambling wins. I wanted to scream, to move, but couldn't. Like locked in my own body. It hurt so much, but thinking of you, I endured." Her words struck like lightning. I sat frozen, tears rolling. How could it be? She was awake, witnessing it all. The betrayal, the cruel laughter, unable to call for help. That image haunted me. Mom lying still, hearing Dad laugh with his lover, Stephen counting cash. Pain overwhelmed, I hugged her. "Mom, I'm sorry, I didn't know." Dad and Stephen's actions were truly inhuman. I couldn't forgive. I clenched my fists, deciding they would pay. Not revenge, but justice, to face consequences. She stroked my hair. Son, I forgive, but I support whatever you do. That night I lay thinking, heart burning with anger. Mom was reborn, but the wound remained. I would make it up to her and ensure the betrayers paid the price. The next morning, while Mom was still asleep, I sat at the old wooden table in the small apartment, beginning to compile the evidence. I reviewed the photos of the documents from Dad's drawer, falsified medical records, receipts for sedatives and paralytics not in the treatment plan, insurance payout statements transferred directly to his account. I printed them out, organizing them carefully into a thick dossier. Then Emily's testimony. I called her, recording our conversation at the cafe where she admitted Dad had doubled her pay and threatened her to stay silent. I promised to testify, she said over the phone, her voice trembling but resolute. I added the report from Dr. Leonard Briggs at Salisbury Hospital, the first to discover Mom's body was normal, and the new doctor in Baltimore confirming she had been affected by prolonged toxic drugs. Finally, Mom's account. I noted down every detail, every word she heard, every plot she silently witnessed. That dossier was like a bomb, heavy in my hands, but also a weapon for justice. I decided to hire a lawyer, not a cheap one, but one specializing in medical crimes and fraud. I searched online and called Harris & Associates in downtown Baltimore, renowned for complex family lawsuits. At the first meeting, I entered the bright office with glass walls overlooking the street, my heart pounding like the first confrontation with Dad. Lawyer Elena Harris, a middle-aged woman with her hair in a bun, calm but sharp-voiced, sat across from me listening to the story. Mr. Coulson, this is serious. Medical abuse, insurance fraud, and possibly false imprisonment. With this evidence, documents, nurse testimony, medical reports, and your mother's statement, we have a high chance of winning. She flipped through the file, eyes lighting up. They used paralytics to keep Mrs. Florence ill to receive benefits and your money. This isn't just civil, it's criminal, possible prison time. I nodded, heart aching. I want them to pay, not with money, but prison. For Mom. She smiled. We'll do that. I'll file the lawsuit and request an investigation. The lawyer fees were high, but I used my meager savings from 5 years of work, money once sent home, now for justice. The investigation unfolded quickly, like a whirlwind sweeping everything away. After the lawyer filed in Salisbury District Court, police got involved immediately. I remember that day, a chilly morning in Baltimore, Mom practicing walking around the room when the phone rang. Mr. Coulson, police have arrested Douglas and Stephen Reed. They're being questioned. My heart raced. I told Mom, Mom, they've been arrested. She sat quietly, eyes glistening. I'm sad, but it had to be. The trial took place 3 months later at Salisbury District Court, an old building with gray stone walls under a gloomy sky like the day I took Mom away. I drove back with her, the 3-hour trip full of tension. Mom sat beside me, gripping my hand. Son, I'm scared, but we must face it. I stroked her hand. I'm with you. The trial opened in a cramped courtroom, wooden benches creaking, the air heavy as lead. The judge, a middle-aged man with a stern voice, banged the gavel. The state versus Douglas Reed and Stephen Reed for medical abuse, insurance fraud, and serious bodily harm. Dad and Stephen sat in the defendant's box in gray prison uniforms, faces gaunt, eyes downcast. Dad glanced at me briefly, eyes red, but I turned away. No feelings left. Stephen sobbed, whispering, Bro, but I shook my head. The prosecutor, a sharp woman, presented the charges. The defendants deliberately used toxic drugs to keep victim Florence Reed in a fake paralyzed state for 5 years, defrauding insurance and money from her son, Coulson Reed. Mrs. Harris, our lawyer, stood, voice resounding. We have full evidence, documents, medical reports, witness testimony. The trial lasted 3 days, each peeling away layers of truth. Day 1, a neurology expert from a major Baltimore hospital testified, based on reports, Mrs. Florence was affected by vecuronium and heavy sedatives, not natural stroke. Her muscles didn't atrophy, reflexes normal, clear signs of drug abuse. If continued, she could have died. His words hit like a hammer. Dad bowed his head. Stephen trembled. Day 2, our evidence was presented. Photos of documents, drug receipts, insurance transfers to Dad's account. "This is fraud proof," Mrs. Harris said firmly. Then Emily took the stand, pale but determined. "Mr. Douglas threatened me, doubled my pay to keep quiet." They injected paralytics into Mrs. Florence Daly, though she wasn't ill. The courtroom buzzed. The judge banged for order. Dad denied. "She's lying." But Emily stared straight. "I have a recording, Your Honor." The audio played, Dad's threatening voice silencing everyone. The final day, Mom took the stand. She walked slowly, leaning on me, but her voice clear and strong. "I was conscious for 5 years, hearing every plot from my husband and youngest son. They discussed injecting drugs to keep me sick forever, taking money from my eldest son and insurance. I heard their laughter dividing the money. My husband calling his lover, my youngest son bragging about gambling. It hurt, but I couldn't move. Her words cut like knives. The courtroom fell silent, only Stephen's sobs. Dad slumped, unable to look at her. I sat below, tears streaming. She was so strong after everything. The trial ended with the judge's conclusion. Based on evidence, defendants Douglas Reed and Stephen Reed are guilty of medical abuse, insurance fraud, and serious bodily harm. He banged the gavel. Douglas Reed sentenced to 15 years, Stephen Reed to 10 years. The courtroom erupted. Dad shouted, "Unfair!" Stephen wailed, led away. Mom and I sat quietly, no cheers, no joy, just silence. She held my hand. "It's over, son." We left in silence, rain still falling outside the court, the distant sea roaring like that day. On the way back to Baltimore, Mom gazed out the window. "I'm sad but relieved. Now it's just us two." I nodded. "I'll take care of you." Everything closed behind, 5 years of deception, the painful trial like an old book chapter. We went home, hearts at peace, but the scars remained. Justice had prevailed, but the family was shattered forever. After the trial, life for Mom and me flowed peacefully, like a calm river after a storm. We returned to the small apartment on the outskirts of Baltimore, where the window overlooked a lazily flowing river, and began rebuilding from the fragments. Mom had fully recovered, a miracle I hadn't dared dream of months earlier. She walked steadily now, no longer needing my support, her voice clear and resonant, just like when she used to sing me lullabies. Every morning she woke early, brewed strong black coffee for me, then sat at the kitchen table with a gentle smile. "Son, what do you want to eat today?" "Mom will cook." I looked at her, my heart overflowing with gratitude. She who had once been a frail woman lying motionless in bed was now my source of strength. We lived simply without luxury. I still worked as a day laborer, earning enough to get by, coming home at night to cook with her. She helped me clean, mend torn clothes, small acts filled with love. "I'm healthy now, don't worry," she often said. But I remained careful, massaging her limbs every evening to prevent weakness. In those days, we rarely spoke of the past, Dad and Stephen now prisoners serving long sentences. But sometimes, in quiet afternoons, she gazed at the river, eyes distant. I miss Salisbury. The sea there was beautiful. I hugged her. "I'll take you to another beach, Mom. Now we have each other, that's enough." That tranquil life taught me, happiness isn't wealth, but moments with loved ones. One day, in the crisp autumn chill of Baltimore, golden leaves falling outside the window, Mom called me over after dinner. We sat at the kitchen table, steam rising from hot teacups, the faint scent of green tea lingering. She looked at me, eyes glistening, voice serious. "Colson, I have something to tell you. Sit down." My heart raced. Why was she acting strange today? Mom held my hand, voice trembling. "Your grandfather left me a large inheritance when he passed 10 years ago. I kept it hidden, afraid your father would squander it. Now seeing your devotion all these years, sacrificing, sending money, caring for me, I've decided to leave it to you. It's savings, stocks, and a small plot of land by a nearby lake. Use it, son, to build your life." Her words struck like lightning. I sat frozen, hands shaking as I held the teacup. How could it be? Grandfather, the man she rarely mentioned, a wealthy farmer on the outskirts, left an estate? I looked at her, eyes blurring with tears. Mom, why didn't you tell me sooner? I don't need money. I just need you healthy by my side. She smiled, stroking my cheek. I knew you'd say that, but I want you happy. Use it, son. I'm old. I just want your joy. I hugged her, overwhelmed. She had endured alone for 5 years, hiding this secret amid Dad and Stephen's schemes. She could have used the money to escape, but chose silence for the family. My heart surged with gratitude, love, and regret. Mom, thank you. But I'll use it for us, not just me. She nodded, eyes bright. I trust you. I was emotional all night, lying awake thinking of Mom's secret. Grandfather, the kind old man with fruit orchards I met only a few times as a child, left such a legacy. Mom hid it well, even from Dad, fearing he'd waste it. Now she gave it to me after seeing my sacrifice, working to exhaustion, sending money without complaint. I cried silently, thinking of those 5 years. If I'd known sooner, would things be different? But no, now was the right time. The next morning I hugged her. I'll use the money to start a small company, Mom. A construction firm helping people repair homes like I did as a laborer. She laughed. Great idea, son. I support you. I used the sum, substantial enough to start a business, to open a small company in Baltimore, hiring a few old co-workers from the site, specializing in affordable home repairs for the poor. The company was named Reed Repairs, the Reed name, but only for Mom and me. It was tough at first, few clients, endless paperwork, but I persevered, working day and night. Mom helped from home. Son, a client called about a roof repair. She smiled, voice cheerful. The business grew. Clients praised, Coulson repairs cheap and quality. I smiled, proud, from laborer to owner, thanks to Mom. Once the company stabilized, I used the remaining money to start a charity, Florence Foundation, named after Mom, helping the sick and families deceived like us. Remembering Mom's 5 years of suffering, the foundation provided free medical care and legal advice for abuse victims. Mom, I want to help others like you helped me, I said. She nodded. My son is kind-hearted. We held community health clinics, distributed medicine, and I shared my story to warn, don't blindly trust family, verify. The foundation grew, receiving donations, and I saw Mom's pride. You make me so happy. This new life brought us greater joy than ever. Mom and I moved to a new home by the lake near Baltimore, a small wooden house with a flower garden overlooking peaceful waters. Mom loved it. Like Salisbury, but without the pain. We lived happily. Mornings she cooked. I took her walking by the lake. Evenings I shared company stories. She laughed when I brought flowers. My son is romantic. I cared for her devotedly, massaging her feet nightly, buying new books, taking her for checkups. Mom, I love you, I said, and she hugged me. Me too, son. In those days, the scars faded, leaving only happiness, mother and son by the lake, living peacefully after the storm. In those quiet moments, I often sat alone by the lake, watching ripples under the setting sun, reflecting on our journey. 5 years of sacrifice, 5 years of deception, a painful trial, and now a new life, all like a long book full of tears and lessons. I, Coulson Reed, once a quiet, simple man in Baltimore, working to exhaustion to send money for Mom. Now I am the owner of a small company, founder of a charity, but most importantly, a son who learned harsh life lessons. 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 lessons, 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 lessons,